For me, do you, the Secretary, in response to a question about how much leverage he does or does not have, said there's leverage standing to the right of me, meaning Foreign Minister Lavrov. There's leverage in Iran, which of course is a part of the ISSG. But do you see any evidence whatsoever that Russia or Iran is interested in exercising such leverage as it has to stop the ceasefire violations?
I think the best thing for me to do would be to point you to what Foreign Minister Lavrov himself said today in answer to those questions about their vision for Syria and the goals they're trying to achieve inside the ISSG. They made it very clear that they continue to support the communiques. Now we have 4 after today, and the UN Security Council resolution, and that they continue to believe in a political transition that is determined by the Syrian people and a whole unified sectarian Syria. So when the Secretary says you have leverage right here in Foreign Minister Lavrov and in Russia, I think he has reason to believe that that leverage exists. Now, the question is are they exercising it? And I think I've said before that at times it hasn't been clear either that the leverage is as significant as once thought, or that they were willing to exercise it as much. We certainly hope that they do. We know they have leverage, as does Tehran, and we hope that they use that leverage in a constructive way in keeping with the UN Security Council resolution and the political process that the ISSG has agreed on. And all I can do is point you back to what Mr. Lavrov said today, which was that they had every intention of exercising that leverage and to participating constructively to trying to get the regime to do the right thing.
But what makes you think they're going to do that today after a 4th piece of paper when they didn't do it after 3 pieces of paper, all of which they signed up to?
Well, we have seen them exercise leverage in a constructive way, though, Arshad, in the past. I mean, you remember, back when the cessation was first agreed to after Munich, we saw a dramatic decrease in attacks on civilians and on the opposition. Did we see a perfect end of the violence? No. But we did see a dramatic decrease in the violence, and we know that was a direct result of influence by Moscow and the Assad regime. So we know that influence is there. It was a clear and unequivocal message that Moscow sent to the Assad regime when President Putin made the decision to withdraw some, obviously not all, but some of his military forces, largely in the form of aircraft, tactical aircraft, from Syria. And that clearly had an impact on the Assad regime. So we know that leverage exists. We also know that Russia has agreed to all the foundational elements of the political process enshrined in the Security Council Resolution 2254 in Syria. So they have agreed to the same consensus initiatives that the international community has. They have used that influence on Assad to affect constructive behavior in the past. So the short answer is yes. I think we have good reason to understand that they have and can use that influence in a positive way. But again, I don't want to drag this on longer, but as I've also said from the podium, it at times, particularly in the more recent past, it hasn't always been evident that they have been willing to use that influence in the most constructive way. We hope, coming out of Vienna today, that there will be a renewed push by all parties, by them, by Iran, and by other members of the ISSG who have influence on other parties in Syria, to use that influence constructively. Yeah.
Mark admitted from this podium a couple of weeks ago that there has been an intermingling, as he put it, of the so-called moderate opposition and extremist and terrorist elements in and around of Aleppo. Do you think it's still the case? What is the U.S. government estimation of the situation at this point? Because you promised to
Well, I
send a
think
signal to the opposition
Right.
to stop doing that.
so. A couple of thoughts. I think clearly Aleppo remains a fluid, dynamic environment, and I'm certainly not in a position to rebut the notion that there remains, to use your phrase, an intermingling problem. Okay, to use Mark's phrase, an intermingling problem. We certainly recognize that that's still a concern, and that is why, if you look at the communique today, the ISSG specifically calls on those who are parties to the cessation to physically, and it says that, physically avoid proximity to groups that are not party to the cessation.